कृतकृत्यास्युभूतं नमामि गजाननं सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां योगिनं विश्वनाथाख्यम् अस्मत्तातस्वरूपिणम् आत्मलाभात् परं लाभं वक्तारं न कदाचन गीतार्थग्रन्थकर्तारं श्रीगुरुं प्रणमाम्यहं योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मे वाचं धृतिं बुद्धिं प्रचोदयात् ॐ नमः सभाभ्यः सभापतिभ्यश्च वो नमः ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ Friends, we are in the 36th talk of Sanatana Dharma series, and in this we are in the subsidiary series Ancient Scriptures, of which we are in the 4th talk, and even that we have another subsidiary within that, Upanishads. In this we are in the 2nd talk out of a total of 5 planned. In our previous talk we stopped at the observation that Brahman, the all-pervading reality, is the substratum of everything. In other words, what we see as the universe is Brahman. Then what about us living beings, human as well as non-human? To understand this, let us start from ourselves. We are going to spend this whole talk on talking about ourselves throughout this talk. It's a long talk. Please bear with me. I have to tell you so many things. Now, when a living being dies, it is only the body that dies. External physical manifestations die. But the soul, jiva, does not die. It travels from one body to another, new body. And we know all this. But that is where I want to start. But all the while, the mind now starts things from the Upanishad. But all the while, the mind which subtly clings to the soul travels along with it. The mind, however, does not remember what it did in the previous body. The mind and soul together individualized in this fashion. They are individualized now. They belong to this, whatever this is. This, the mind and soul together individualized in this fashion go on from body to body, again and again. This is the unique principle of transmigration. The mind which is irrevocably attached to the soul, it is attached, actually carries with it the weight of all the experiences of each life. This weight is not the memory, not at all, because memory is in the physical brain and the brain is lost, has been cremated or whatever. But it is a heavy luggage of impressions, pure and impure, which the mind has collected in each of its sojourns in a body. So that is the heavy luggage it carries. It is like the wind. The mind is like the wind, which carries the smell of a rose garden through which it has passed. Even long after it has left the garden, the smell is there. Like the wind which has passed through a filthy and stinking place, the mind carries the stink of the past, good or evil. It had collected in its previous births all this stink and takes it on into its succeeding births. Thus are born our tendencies. You see, each person has a tendency. We say it is his nature. In the same family, for different children, there are different tendencies, different characteristics. in terms of nature, behavior, attitude. So that this is how the tendencies and inborn nature of people left in the subconscious mind by all the actions, thoughts, and expressions which were occupying the mind in the previous lives. So they constitute the present tendencies, the impressions. So they color the nature and state of the mind of the present life. These are called the vasanas, samskaras, vasanas. Of course, mind serves as the material that carries all this. Vasanas or tendencies or samskaras. During its passage along with the soul, mind carries this. But the Upanishads, the metaphysics in the Upanishad, does not recognize mind as a separate existing entity on its own. No. What is mind? It is only a flow of thoughts on the subtle bed of vasanas. The vasanas are the basis. On the subtle bed, mind is a flow of thoughts, today's thoughts. It is only a bundle of desires. If there were no thoughts or no desires, there would be no mind. These vasanas have been inherited from an eternal past, time immemorial. Even in the Pralaya time, when everything had been merged in the Creator, universe has been merged into the Creator. The vasanas existed in a latent form, attached to individual souls. They were all there in the Creator, in whatever way we don't know. There is a reservoir, perhaps. It is these that blossom in the next day of Brahma, the Creator. The Jiva's journey has been through an eternal past. The Jiva is the subject of all experience. However, our Jiva is not the real I. The real I does not do any action. Follow me carefully. We are getting into the heart of the Upanishads now. The real I does not do any action, has no thoughts, has no feelings, has no emotions. He is unaffected. Who? The real I. We will talk about the real I and whatever the other I is shortly. The real I is unaffected, unperturbed, uncontaminated, unsullied by any of the happenings to the body, mind and intellect, BMI, in which it has been residing. Jiva resides in different BMIs throughout his journey. Whatever happens to that BMI, the body, mind, intellect, the real I, the real self is unaffected. It is actually a non-participating witness. Everything that happens to the Jiva, it has witnessed. Just like a street light. What does the street light do? Street light witnesses everything that happens under the light. But it does not participate. It has nothing to do with it. It non-participating witness. It misses nothing. Jiva, the resident in the body, is actually a spark of the absolute consciousness. Without that, it won't have any life. So the spark of the absolute consciousness is the Jiva. Therefore, it is sentient. So what does the Jiva do? The Jiva lives in a body. Wrongly, it identifies itself with the body, mind, intellect in which it is residing. This is the whole problem. Jiva identifies itself with the body, mind, intellect in which it is residing. People who know all this will think that this is all very simple. Yes, of course. I am talking very fundamental things, but I am talking to a novice who wants to learn about the Upanishads. Thus, Jiva creates for itself a false I. It identifies itself with the BMI, So this jiva, with its wrong association with that BMI in which it is residing, jiva is sentient. So it gives a sentience. So that BMI gets a borrowed sentience. Right? This is the false I. This jiva come BMI is the false I. This it has been doing every time with every BMI body that it has happened to reside. This is the colossal ignorance, thinking that I am the real I. The jiva wrongly identifies with the BMI and thinks that I am the I. This is the colossal ignorance which follows the jiva from time immemorial. Almost every Upanishad talks about this. Now come on. When you say somebody pinched me, who is saying this? It is the false I who is talking. The me does not refer to the real I. Me does not refer to the real I. Somebody pinched me. They pinched only by BMI. It is the body that has been pinched. But the jiva has identified with the body. So it says, I have been pinched. Nobody can pinch the real I. So when I say I have been pinched, this I refers to the BMI. All Vedanta teaching is therefore only for the false I. Because the real I does not need any teaching. It is Brahman. We are going to see that. So all Vedanta teaching is for the false I to get out of its ignorance. The doer of actions is the false I. The thinker of thoughts is the false I. The experiencer of consequences is the false I. Doer, thinker, experiences is the false I. Incidentally, the false I is also called the false self, also called the empirical self. Excuse me for a minute. So, the false I is called the false self or the empirical self. So what does the Upanishad tell us? What does it teach, the false I? It teaches about life. All material happiness is transient. What does it mean? Worldly happiness is not the ultimate in happiness. It just comes and goes. Agama payi. It comes and goes. As we alternate between pleasure and pain, we do that. As we alternate between happiness and misery, joy and sorrow, we are only passing from one experience to another. None of which is everlasting. Nothing lasts. All these experiences are transient. Suppose we stand back and observe ourselves and the world. What really is pleasure? Pleasure is nothing but an intermediate experience between two moments of pain. How do you identify a pleasure? There is no pain. So the absence of pain, and then there is the pleasure. And then when the pleasure goes, pain. I don't mean any serious pain. The absence of pleasure is the loss of pleasure, and you have lost it. So it is only an intermediate experience between two moments of pain. Similarly, pain is an intermediate experience between two moments of pleasure. There are two extreme experiences physical. One is birth, one is death. The first one, birth, leaves no memory. The second one leaves no experiencer. So in between, we undergo an infinite variety of experiences. None of these experiences is permanent. This is what the Upanishads tell us, and we know it is true. Nobody can deny this. So therefore the Upanishads say that the real permanent bliss does not come from this material world or any of your experiences. It comes from within one's self, capital S-E-L-F. Such a bliss which comes from the awareness of oneself is eternal and universal, say the Upanishads. Now what is this self? First realize that oneself is different from one's self. Myself is different from my self. Self. The second self is capital S. Who is to realize this? The false self has to realize this. It has to realize that it is not the real self. The self in us is different from our BMI, body, mind, intellect. We say my body, my mind, my intellect. Here the my refers to what? My refers to something which is not the BMI. Because we say my body. So my does not refer to the body. So there is that something to which that my refers. That is the self in us. That is the Atman. The self cannot be established by reasoning or inference. If that has been so, many people would have done it. It cannot be experienced by intuition. Mind and intellect can be so experienced, but the self cannot be so experienced. The self is neither the body, nor the ego, nor is it a series of mental states. No, it is consciousness itself. For if it were not so, we are conscious, no doubt. So if the self you say is not consciousness, it has to be connected or linked to the consciousness inside. There must be something relating the self to consciousness. And that something would need two more linkages, relations. One to link it with the self and the other to link it with consciousness. So the self is consciousness. The most important property of the self is that it is directly revealed. Truth of the self is beyond the mind. The mind is perishable, certainly. And the self is not. So in seeking to know the self, the perishable mind merges in the imperishable self and effaces itself. So once the self is known, there is no more mind, only the self. Whether it is childhood or adulthood, we refer to ourselves as I. It's same I. Its I never changes. It is nothing that is included in all that we call mine. When I say mine, there are several things. My possessions, my body, my house, my property, my relation, my brother, my sister, my father. So, all this is mine. But the I is none of these. Write out all that goes under the list of what we might call mine. Include in that all the physical possessions, also one's body, one's limbs, mind, mental opinions, my opinion. Anything which can go under my. Write out. Throw out all of them. Now what remains? That is I. This I is the self of the Upanishads. Body, mind, intellect, they are not permanent. What has a beginning must end. Of course, I am picking statements from the Upanishads. But this is true. We can see that. To be born means moving gradually otherwise to death. Dharma, artha and kama. There are 4 objectives of life, of which I am picking the 3, dharma, artha and kama. They all operate within the cycle of birth and death. The only thing that transcends this cycle is moksha. The only thing that transcends this cycle is moksha. And what is this moksha? It means release from the cycle of birth and death. When will we do that? Moksha is the realization that I am the self. This I, we use the word I very often. Carefully separate all those other things and realize that I am the self and nothing else. That is moksha. We shall come down and discuss at a more elementary level. There are always 3 urges in man. What are the 3 urges? To live, to know, and to enjoy. To live, to know, and to enjoy are the 3 urges, and almost are only 3 urges. Everything else can be classified under this. These 3 arise from the 3 facets of divinity inherent in man. They are Sat, existence, Chit, consciousness, and Ananda, bliss. Sat contributes to the urge that you want to live, exist. Chit, consciousness, contributes to the thought that you want to know, knowledge, Chit. Ananda, bliss, you want to be happy, you want to enjoy. So Sati, Chiti and Ananda, these are the 3 facets of divinity inherent in us. All these are with us already because we are that. We wrongly think we are limited. Now Upanishads are speaking. We keep wanting to live. We keep wanting to know. We keep wanting to enjoy. We want this. We want that. But the moment we want something, our unhappiness begins. The unhappiness is not in the absence of things, but in our wanting them. Happiness is already with us. Unhappiness arises from our searching for it outside. The moment you say, I want to be happy, you have invited unhappiness. No one can be completely happy without knowing that his nature, he is himself happiness. Happiness, pleasure, bliss are all with us, in us. We should look for the ultimates rather than look for them in their material sense. Looking for pleasure in the material sense, as if that was the end in itself, that leads to unhappiness. Our initial state is happiness. Repeatedly, the Upanishads cry from the right housetops. Whenever we want something, unhappiness starts. We can see that. When our want is fulfilled, we go back to our initial state, namely happiness. So happiness is not what was given to us by the thing we thought we obtained, but it is our real state. This is the quintessence of message of all the Upanishads. So the Upanishad says that our self, the Atman, is existence, consciousness, bliss. It is Satchidananda. Existence and bliss we just talked about. But how is it consciousness? Let us analyze this. The only way by which we seem to understand anything is by our mind. What hears sound is the ear. What tastes an edible is the tongue. What sees an object is the eye. All these sensations are received by the brain and registered by the mind. We don't know where the mind is. But the awareness of all these sensations, awareness, is due to the life force, the Atman principle within, without which we could not have been conscious of anything. When we switch on a light suppose you go to into a dark room, switch on the light, we see many objects. Same light lights them all. When the room is empty, the same light shows that emptiness. In the same way, when the room is dark, the darkness is registered in awareness by the light within us. There is no outer light now. The light within us registers the awareness that there is darkness. That light in us is what goes by the name of consciousness. Consciousness is the light within us which showed us that the room was lighted or the room was dark. It was not the eyes that showed the light. The eyes only received the sensation, and the sensation was passed to the brain, and through the brain the mind. So light is that in the presence of which things are known. Without the presence of consciousness, we don't know things. That is the light within us. Light is that in the presence of which things are known, in the absence of which things are not known. So light is the illuminator of any object. There are external lights like sun or moon. There are material lights, but they are only relative, empirical. Even our sense organs, they are lights. Mind is a light, but none of these is the ultimate light. What is the ultimate light? Because all these lights that I described now, they do the function of being a light only when consciousness is there. Each light itself is an object for consciousness. I can think of my mind, I can see my, right? Each light itself is an object for consciousness. Light itself is known only by the ultimate light of consciousness within us. Now let us go to the Upanishads again. Beauty of the Upanishads is that instead of starting with the absolute reality that is Brahman, they start from what is experienced at the human level. As we saw just now, we were discussing light and our consciousness. The innermost recesses of the human mind are first explored. This investigation, what does it lead to? It leads first to the physical body, made up and nurtured by food. So it is called the Annamaya Kosha, Anna sheath. It's a sheath, it's a kosha. 5 such sheaths are described, each forming, as it were, the sheath or husk of the true self. The true self is the kernel. What are these different sheaths? Prana, prana sheath, pranamaya kosha, then manomaya kosha, the mana, the mind sheath, sheath of mind, or instinctive and perceptual consciousness. Then the vijnanamaya kosha, it is the sheath of intelligence. And lastly, the anandamaya kosha, or the sheath of bliss. The second, third, and fourth. What are the second, third, and fourth? Pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha. They constitute the subtle body or sukshma sharira. There are 3 levels of the body: physical body, sukshma sharira, the subtle body, and then the causal body, karana sharira. The last, the anandamaya kosha, that is the causal body, namely the karana sharira. I have actually quoted from Taittiriya Upanishads and other Upanishads. The Atman or the self is none of these. Be clearly understand this. It is none of these. It is not the Pranamaya Kosha, it is not the Vijnanamaya Kosha, it is not the Anandamaya Kosha. It is the innermost essence of man. When that innermost essence is associated with the inner organ, namely mind, we become the knower. Upanishad declares that the Atman is so deep-seated within us that it has a sense of undeniable reality that goes with it. You don't have to search for it. You don't look for a proof of its existence. It is there. You are there. You are yourself. This is consciousness, existence, and bliss. Now comes the distinctive Upanishadic declarations, which gives the Hindu philosophy its distinctive character. I am telling you three of them. Number one, there are not several Atmans. I told you Atman is our real self. There are no several real selves, because the consciousness within one animate and the consciousness within any other animate is the same. Consciousness has no boundary of space or time. Consciousness, capital C. So there are no several Atmans. Atman is one. One and only one. Two, Brahman, the transcendental reality from which everything has emanated, and this Atman are one and the same. We are going to see a lot about it in the next talk. The mundane world, that is a manifestation of Brahman, is only relatively real. As far as the absolute truth is concerned, non-duality, there is nothing dual, there is only one. Truth is only one. You may call it God, but it is not the God of the common understanding with superlative qualities. It is Brahman, the unqualified Brahman, same as Atman. It has no attributes. You cannot have attributes for this. So that is number two. Number one is no several Atmans, only one. Number two is Brahman and Atman are the same. We are going to talk about it next talk. Number three, there is only one self, but several jivas. Pure consciousness, which is the Atman or Brahman, does not undergo any change of form or character. So what undergoes changes? Jiva. Jiva is nothing but Brahman in an empirical dress of BMI, in which the sprouting, follow me carefully, Jiva is only Brahman in an empirical dress. What is the dress? BMI. And what happens in that? There is a thought of distinctness from Brahman. I am Jiva. I am an individual separate from Brahman. This thought has sprouted. When it has sprouted, we don't know. Eternal. This thought of individuality is the ego. This is the starting point of the Jiva. Jiva is therefore consciousness conditioned by ignorance. What is ignorance about? Ignorance in the form of an ego of individuality. I am separate. I am so and so. You see, remember, the self can have no direct knowledge of the world except through the apparatus of the BMI. BMI is an apparatus. This apparatus, as well as the small world which becomes the object of its knowledge through this apparatus, is spoken of as the adjunct, upadhi, of consciousness. So consciousness, here, what we have, has this apparatus BMI. So there is an object of knowledge. Through this BMI, it knows things. All this is the adjunct of this consciousness. All this adjunct is matter. They are not spirit. They are not Chaitanya. Consciousness is Chaitanya. Consciousness. So the consciousness of Chaitanya, which has this limited portion of matter, we are not having everything as our adjunct, because there are several things which I don't know. Consciousness which has this limited portion of matter for its adjunct is the Jiva. This is the definition of jiva. Each jiva has its own knowing apparatus because the mind in which it lives has borrowed the sentience of the jiva from the consciousness. So each jiva has its own knowing apparatus and moves in a small world of its own, with its own joys, with its own sorrows, and it has an individual existence. So though the self is one, jivas are many. Brahman is the source of everything, I said. All the movie pictures you see on the screen, they owe their existence to the screen. The screen can be there without the pictures, but the pictures cannot be there without the screen. So also consciousness exists without there being any object to be conscious of. Light can exist without there being any object to be lighted. Without the clay, there is no clay pot. But the clay can exist without the clay pot. Thus, Brahman exists. Brahman is the first cause. It is itself uncaused. There is nothing else. There is no other object. No other Brahman. Brahman is only one. There is no second Brahman. And there are no parts of Brahman. You cannot say the other part, this part, or that part of Brahman. No, no, no. Of course, this is Advaita philosophy. Here, the philosophies of Ramanuja and Madhva differ. But we will talk about it in a different context, not now. All that we call wealth is anitya, ephemeral, transient. Nothing that belongs to anitya will ever lead to the nitya. Nitya is the permanent one, Brahman, Atman. You cannot get to it through any material period. Nitya Vastu is Atman. In Chandogya Upanishad, there is a story. Virochana, the king of Asuras, as well as Indra, the king of the gods, both of them pursue the question, what is the Atman? The Asuras conclude that the body is the Atman. This is Asura Vedanta. On the other hand, Indra does an analysis of experience. He analyzes the waking state, he analyzes the dream state, he analyzes the sleeping state, and discards them one by one as unreal. Finally comes to the conclusion that reality is the Atman. This kind of discarding anitya vastu, this is called the discrimination between nitya and anitya. Nitya nitya vastu viveka. First quality, first sadhana characteristic necessary for a spiritual ascent. Again, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is one Bhrigu Maharshi. He begins such an analysis from the Annamaya Kosha and goes through all the koshas as we have just seen. First thinking that it is Brahman, then after inquiry discarding it. Finally comes to the right conclusion that Brahman is what remains as the substratum of even the Anandamaya Kosha. Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. Even Anandamaya, which is the shell, inside shell of all these things, even that has a substratum, Brahman. Another way of looking at it is, by proper discrimination, he has discarded the five koshas as impermanent, finally got to know that the Atman is the only permanent entity. So let me give you a really rock bottom summary of what the Upanishad means. The Vedanta of Upanishads reduces everything to five fundamentals. What are the five? Sat, existence, Chit, consciousness, Ananda, bliss. These three. Sati, I will come to the other two. Wait. Sati, existence, it is revealed by the fact that it exists. Chit, consciousness, revealed by the fact of happiness. Ananda, bliss, it is revealed by the fact of happiness. Chitta, consciousness, revealed by the fact of knowing, knowledge. So, Sati, Chitta, Ananda, they are permanent, they are eternal. Two more, Nama and Rupa, name and form. Everything is a name. Every visible thing has a form. So the first three, Sati, Chitta, Ananda, they are permanent, eternal. Each one of them constitutes our real self. The other two, last two, Nama and Rupa, name and form, are transient. The body, mind, intellect belongs to the name and form category. Anything in our experience belongs to the name and form category. So I am coming now to a very practical experience, example for you to think. When somebody pinches me, I feel the pain. As I told you, it is really the BMI that senses the pain and reacts to it. But the BMI would not have done this if I were not there. I, the capital I, real I. For example, a dead body would not react. So the I, the consciousness. So if the sentience borrowed from the self within, sentience borrowed from the self within were not there, BMI would not have done it. So the association of the real I with the BMI, follow me carefully, the association of the real I with the BMI, that is what makes me, the false self, feel and react. The false self will not feel and react if the real I was not there. So the real I has to be there in association with this BMI. The superimposition of BMI, body, mind, intellect, and its experiences. All the experiences are of the body, mind, intellect. But that is superimposed on the real I. That is the problem. The false I, the empirical self, the jiva, they are all the same. If it refuses to associate the real I with the BMI and remains what it should be, there should be no feeling of pain. The false I should know that it is the real self and it has nothing to do with the BMI. If that feeling is there, there should be no pain, no provocation for reaction or action. This is what Vedanta requires of us. Understand that you are the real self. So do not associate yourself with the BMI. Repeatedly, all the Upanishads say this. Every action happens only when the permanent facet of man, there is a permanent facet of man, there is a temporary facet of man. What is the permanent facet? Satchitananda. What is the temporary facet? Nama Rupa. When these two are mixed with each other, problems arise. The Nama Rupa facet, and it's going on, we are superimposing it on the real I, on the Satchidananda facet. It is this superimposition that is the actor. It is this superimposition that is the reactor. It is the feeler. It is the thinker. Who makes this superimposition or association? It's the jiva, the empirical self. The empirical self has got the sentience from the real self. That is why it is here, right? It has got, and it makes this association wrongly from time immemorial. So Vedanta says, get over this mixing up of Satchidananda with the Nama Rupa. This is the sum and substance of the Vedanta Upanishadic message. We will look at the 4 Mahavakyas in the next talk. Thank you. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavedyam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.